Welcome to the Tom Matt Show. You are walking through the front door of the refirement zone. And now, your host, Tom Matt.
Last week, Craig Stiles was here. Inheritance, giving, and receiving. Now, that's very important for people to understand because with this supposed $67 trillion of wealth transfer coming from us baby boomers, people need to pay attention to this kind of stuff. So, hey, welcome to this week's episode, everybody. This is going to be something else. I'm telling you right now, I got a first-time guest here who has done a ton of this work. I'm going to call this one 4 Whys Concerning Energy. All right. So bear with me here because I got a bio of a guy who is just an amazing cat. Robert Bryce is with us today. Robert Bryce is a Texas-based author, journalist, podcaster, film producer, public speaker, cool guy. Over the past 3 decades, his articles have appeared in numerous publications, including all of the biggies: Wall Street Journal, Times, National Review, Field and Stream, sweet, Austin Chronicle. I'm skipping over a whole bunch of stuff here, but I got to tell you, I found Robert in such the random way when I came across his Enron book recently, like within the last couple of months. And I read that bad boy and it was just, I'm like, I got to find this cat. And then all of a sudden the Pandora's box of Robert opened up and it was just crazy. This is a summary from his latest book, his 6th book, A Question of Power, Electricity, and the Wealth of Nations. In the ancient world, it was guns, germs, and steel that determined the fates of people and nations. Now more than ever, it's electricity. Although global demand for power is doubling every 2 decades, electricity remains one of the most difficult forms of energy to supply and do so reliably. Now, I don't know diddly crap about this. That's why we get these experts in here, and I'm so happy to talk to Robert. But to continue on with this review, 3 billion people are still living in places where per capita electricity use is less than what's used by an average American refrigerator, which is absolutely hard to comprehend in my mind. How we close the enormous gap between the electricity rich and the electricity poor will affect everything from women's rights and healthcare to warfare and climate change. Here's the book right here. I got it right in front of me. All right. I'm just going to leave it there. Robert lives in Austin with his wife, Lauren. He's done 400 keynote lectures, speeches, been all over the place, been on every media outlet, been in front of Congress, just all over. And I'm going to tee this cat up because these 4 whys, we had a little quick conversation yesterday. We could talk for hours. I guarantee it. And I hope that we will when we compile everything together. But for today, I want to welcome to the radio program my new buddy, Robert Bryce.
Thanks, Tom. That is a long and very nice introduction. I heard one guy who was a British Navy guy. He said, yeah, that introduction, he said it was one my mother would have believed and my father would have enjoyed. Something like that. but that's very gracious. I'm happy to be with you. There's a ton to talk about. I joke, when I give a fair number of public engagement speeches and I get up there and I say, look, I don't know what we're going to talk about. There's nothing happening in the energy business, which is not true at all. There is a lot happening in the energy and power world these days.
All right. Well, as we talked about yesterday, our first segment, because we got this show going here, this radio program thing. And the first segment is about you and your fam and getting you going. Not that you need to be warmed up, because I think you wake up raring to go every day. Just from the videos I've watched from you, and I've become a huge fan of your work. And so it's like, we need to understand, I really need to understand science behind things, the just all of the logic. I mean, it's just logic. You need to help us out here. You need to enlighten my listeners. But first, let's talk about you. Let's talk about your family. Sure. Let's do that. Would you please?
Sure. No, happy to introduce myself. And my podcast, the Power Hungry Podcast, I have guests introduce themselves. So my name is Robert Bryce. I live in Austin, Texas. I'm first things first, I'm a proud dad. My wife, Lauren, and I have been together 40 years, married 36 or 37.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we have 3 great children, Mary, Michael, and Jacob. They're the joys of our life. They're all doing well. They're all adults. They've all moved out. So we're empty nesters, which is a beautiful thing as well. So, and I'm very lucky to, my wife, Lauren, and I are very happy together. We live in Austin. We have a great place here. I'm incredibly fortunate person in my life and in my career. As far as the career stuff goes, I'm a journalist. I'm an author. I consider myself fundamentally a reporter, and I write about the energy and power businesses, and I have been doing so for more than 30 years. I've written 6 books. I'm the host of the Power Hungry podcast. I'm the executive producer of a film called Juice, How Electricity Explains the World. I'm working on another film.
Great film. I just saw it the other night. Sorry to interrupt, but I just saw it the other night.
Very proud of that film. It's on all the major streaming platforms. And now I'm on Substack and having great fun there. robertbryce.substack.com. Go and subscribe. I've got a long piece there today called The Billionaires Behind the Gas Bans. And it's a piece I'd had in mind for a very long time, and it's getting good traction. So enough on that, Tom. Let's talk about stuff.
Okay, let's talk about stuff. Well, the 4 whys, and we could deep dive that article you wrote,
Sure.
which is good, and maybe we'll get to that later. But let's just tee it up. Why European energy crisis? Why do we have a European energy crisis? What in the heck is going on? We'll get to all the other stuff, but let's just do the whys first. Let's do that.
Sure.
What's up?
Sure. Well, look, I mean, Europe is in a mess. I mean, and they've been pretty fortunate. We have to be clear about that, in that they've had a fairly warm winter. In fact, a really warm winter. And so remember back in August of last year, natural gas prices in Europe were at $100 per million BTUs, $100. Now, today they're at, I think I just checked 16, or they're less than $20 per million BTUs. And compared to the U.S. at Henry Hub now, where the gas is trading about $3 on the front month contract. So Europe's prices relative to the U.S. are still high, but they're nowhere near what they were last summer. But that's just a fast forwarding. But what is going on in Europe? Why is Europe in an energy crisis? Well, of course, part of this is due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But let's also be clear, Tom. The Europeans drove themselves into the ditch. They brought this energy crisis onto themselves. And what did they do? I call it the fatal quadfecta. And this is the point that I made, or points that I made when I testified before the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee in November of 2021. They made 4 key mistakes. First, they underinvested in hydrocarbons. They overinvested in renewables. They shut down their coal and nuclear plants prematurely. And they relied too heavily on imports, particularly from Uncle Vlad. And so now they are in a world of hurt, and they can't rely on the renewables. Their electricity prices fluctuate dramatically depending on whether the wind is blowing or not, which makes, I mean, it's just totally insane. And they're not drilling for hydrocarbons. So this winter, they are going to be okay. It appears. Now we're at the end of January. But Europe is going to be in the hurt locker in terms of energy supplies, low-cost energy, for a very long time to come, because they drove themselves into the ditch. And this is a problem. It took them 2 decades to get into it. It will take them probably that long to get out of it.
Wow. Well put. Okay. Let me reset this for a second here, everybody. Robert Bryce is with us. 4 whys concerning energy. Now, Robert is, again, as I said earlier, Texas-based author, journalist, podcaster, and just a great guy. I mean, his videos on LinkedIn, what you do on LinkedIn with all your articles are stupendous. I mean, it's just really, short, sweet, to the point. Got a minute to go before we go to break here. Why don't you give me your take on those little clips that you do, because those are super cool.
Well, thanks. I'm glad you enjoy them. I have fun making them, and I've got to credit my daughter Mary. She's 29. She said, "Dad, you should be doing these short videos." And so I do these short videos. I call them about a minute, and I just did one today on the blackouts in Pakistan. And so I just talk about what's going on in Pakistan. Why is this happening? And so it's been we post them on LinkedIn. We put them on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter, and they're getting good traction.
All right, I'm going to set this up for break here, and then we'll come back with Robert Bryce. Robert Bryce is with us. He's an energy expert, writer, journalist, filmmaker, you name it, done it all, dad. That's the big thing. He's a dad. He's a husband for a long time.
Amen.
Exactly. I mean, we come from the same cloth. We're exactly the same age. It's going to be fun. Stick around, everybody. When I tee this cat up, look out. All right? You listen to the Tom Matt Show. Robert Bryce is my guest. We'll be right back.
For more information about today's guest, Robert Bryce, author, journalist, and public speaker, please visit robertbryce.com or robertbryce.substack.com. Also, his podcast, Power Hungry Podcast, can be found wherever you get your podcasts. This is the Tom Matt Show.
Our Ameriprise financial advisor, and we hope it will be yours as well, as Craig Stiles. He was our guest last week. He is the guy. Ameriprise financial advisor Craig Stiles can help you plan for the life you want today and well into the future. And again, full disclosure, Craig is our guy. We have all of our retirement savings with Craig. We moved it all over there when I hit the retirement zone, and it's all good. And we're really, really thrilled to be with the most honest guy I know. I got some numbers coming at you and some emails, so get ready here. Local numbers, 517-483-4893. Craig, this is email, craig.stiles@ampf.com. His 800 number, which he actually didn't remember when I interviewed him last week, but I have it here, 1-800-528-1355. And his office is located at 2400 Lake Lansing Road, Suite B as in Bism or Brilliant, Lansing, Michigan, 48912. Craig is the guy. He is our guy. I hope you can find him. Go to our financial fitness little clip cartoon thing that we have on our website, tommattshow.com, and you'll find like 20 some episodes of different financial issues that we've talked about. And we've talked about many, many, many different things. Here are some of the stations in and out of the network carrying us, have carried us. You never know about broadcast radio, especially syndication, WGHN 92.1 on the lakeshore of Lake Michigan in Grand Haven. Thank you guys so much for carrying us. You were the first to ever put us on broadcast radio, and I'm proud to always have you first out of the chute. WGIM 1240 AM in Lansing, the big stick and the flagship of the Michigan Talk Network. WJRW 1340 AM in Grand Rapids. WKLQ 1490 Muskegon, WYPV FM 94.5 up north in Mackinac City. There's like 40 or 50 stations in the Michigan Talk Network. Some of them, a lot of them are talk. Some of them aren't. That's okay. That's fine. WYPV FM 94.5 Mackinac City is our up north. I know we're up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And our PBS affiliate at Michigan State University, WKAR AM 870. I want to thank Craig Stiles for creating Desideri Analytics, his proprietary algorithm. That's what makes him the bomb. And he's greatness, all right? And also I want to thank Steve and Ivy Gruber, owners of the Michigan Talk Network, for carrying our radio broadcast. Okay, today, Robert Bryce is with me, really cool guy. I knew it when I started reading his stuff, and it's like, you know when you get a feeling and you're just going to click? He and I could tell. He's just a good guy. And so when we just started our interview here, Robert, we just did the first why that we talked about yesterday, the European energy crisis, and you kind of nailed that one. Here's the next why for you, my friend.
Sure.
Why renewables can't and won't meet, and I have Michigan's needs, and then I have in parentheses America. What's up with that?
Well, Tom, it's interesting, talking to you from Michigan. My wife's from Ann Arbor. She's native Ann Arbor. Her dad taught at University of Michigan for many years. In fact, he got his PhD from Michigan State. So there in Lansing, and Lauren was born in Lansing. So I have not my roots, but my family roots in Michigan. All you have to do is look around your home state. When you look around there and you see what is happening, the rural backlash in Michigan against the encroachment of large wind and solar projects, there's your answer. That's why wind and solar can't possibly provide all the power or energy that we need, because there simply isn't enough land. So look at Almer Township or any of the other numerous townships in Caro Township, where those local communities are saying, we don't want these 700 foot high wind turbines in our neighborhoods, nor do we want our agricultural land covered with these solar panels. So you see this in Michigan, which has become one of the hottest areas in terms of the friction that is being facing renewables, or look to your neighbor right nearby in Ohio. Last year alone in Ohio, more than 40 townships banned the installation of either wind or solar or both. And this is happening all across the country. I've documented this. It's on my website, robertbryce.com, the Renewable Rejection Database. And so last year alone, we saw across the United States, 79 communities rejecting or restricting solar projects, 55 communities rejecting or restricting wind projects. The reality is the fundamental problem here isn't money. It isn't political popularity. Wind and solar are politically popular. It's basic physics. The power density of wind and solar is simply too low, which means they require a lot of land. And we don't, there's this idea, we'll just put it out there, out there in vacant land. No, that's exactly wrong. There is no vacant land in America. Everyone everywhere cares about what's in their neighborhood. And you see that in spades in Michigan. And so that's the short answer. And I could give you a much longer answer. I've written about this now for more than a decade, about this friction that is greeting these big renewable projects all across the country.
Is there going to be a middle ground? Are they going to find, I mean, unless you create real estate, it's just no way, right? I mean, it's the physics of the whole thing. As you say, it's actually the science, right?
Yeah, there is a limit to the amount of power that you can produce from the wind. It's called the Betz limit. You can only wring a certain amount of energy out of this very diffused source of. There's a lot of wind, and there's a lot of energy in the wind, but turning that into useful power, that's a difficult thing.
Having a portfolio with wind in the portfolio. Is it doable? Is it a smart move, or are we getting ahead of ourselves in this interview?
I don't think it is a smart move, Tom. I think if we're going to be serious about CO2 emissions reductions, if we're going to talk seriously and talk about climate change, I can say, damn it, can I? Damn it, we need to get serious about nuclear energy. And again, we can talk about this in Michigan. Entergy was allowed to close the Palisades nuclear plant there in Michigan, and they closed it last year at about the very same time that the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator was saying, we're short of power. We need to keep all the power plants we have online. And yet that power plant was closed, a nuclear power plant. If we're going to be serious about reducing emissions, and I think that makes sense, well, we can't be closing these nuclear plants. There is no way forward. There is no way forward to achieve scale in the reductions of CO2 emissions without large-scale nuclear power. My line on this is very clear. If you're anti-CO2 and you're anti-carbon dioxide, if you're anti-CO2 and you're anti-nuclear, you are pro-blackout. I am anti-blackout, Tom. I'm fundamentally anti-blackout. We need more nuclear. Palisades should be reopened. And the company that bought it, Holtec, is trying to make that happen. It's not clear whether it will, but nevertheless, that's one of the things in the works.
Well, and you notice you wrote about this in A Question of Power. And hold this book up again. I remember reading in there about the data centers and the power that the data centers pull. And I got about a minute before we want to go to break here. So why don't you talk about that just for a second, and then we'll come back and finish that thread. But these giant data centers, they are massive electricity users.
Sure. Well, and we could even go beyond that and talk about, weed is legal in Michigan, pot farms, data centers, electric vehicles. What we're seeing across the economy are areas where we're seeing big growth in certain segments of the economy for electricity. We can't rely on intermittent weather-dependent renewables to provide that power. We have to have reliable power, full stop, and it has to be affordable, and the cleaner, the better. So data centers are only part of the equation, but we have these other issues we have to address as well. And we're not, as a country and even on the state level, we're not doing it in a serious manner.
All right, Robert Bryce is here, everybody. 4 Whys Concerning Energy. Love this conversation. This is something we all need to become more aware of. Building awareness, education, all of this knowledge transfer. I hope you're going to stick around and listen to this thing, because this is going to be a good one, everybody. Once again, Robert Bryce, 4 Whys Concerning Energy, Power Hungry podcast. You want to check that one out. Tom Matt Show. We'll be right back.
Thank you again to our Segment 2 sponsor, Craig Stiles of Ameriprise Financial. For more information on services provided by Craig, please visit ameripriseadvisors.com/craig.stiles or by calling 517-483-4893. You're tuned in to The Tom Matt Show.
Simplest way to connect with us is via our website, tommattshow.com, where you will find a redesigned, simpler page. Love it so much. These things take so much time and so much energy and so much checking and rechecking, but it's working really well. Sandy's on top of everything. And so please go check that out. Our YouTube presence is growing. You guys know I hadn't done YouTube. I hadn't done YouTube for 12 years because I had this other thing called a job at the university, and it was doing radio, and that was that. Well, now the YouTube presence is growing and growing, and it's becoming fun, and I like doing the stories over there, and they're small pieces of what we do. Facebook, Tom Matt Show, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. Our mission is to build an engaged society and team. That's why we have a guest of the quality of a Robert Bryce on because we want to build an engaged society and team. We want to connect with all of you. So whichever social media is your favorite, drop us a note. We respond to all messaging and want your input because it's all about us, Generation Us, everybody else. The Refinement Zone, the RFZ, as I call it, is all about community collaboration and cooperation, the 3 C's of sharing stories and ideas. It's all fun. It's great. The RFZ is doing well on YouTube. It's a slow growth pattern, and I'm learning every day. Every day, I'm chipping away at it and chipping away, and that's what you got to do if you're going to become good at something. You have to get in there, and you have to have reps, and you got to put effort out. You got to do these things. So please check that out, the RFZ or the Tom Matt Show. YouTube, we're having that as well, and they put little clips up there. Kind of copying my guest, Robert Bryce, is doing such a good job that it's like, well, Robert's doing these things, and his LinkedIn 1-minute little clips are awesome. You want to check those out. His Power Hungry podcast is amazing, and his articles, books are great. I mean, what else can I say? I mean, all right, bud. Fear of nuclear, energy poverty. I've got so many notes here on all of this. Land use, nuclear, coal, gas. Let's talk about energy in itself and just the thermodynamics of it. Is that the right word?
Sure. Yeah.
Can you talk about those and why these things we need to come to grips with all of it?
Well, in my 4th book called Power Hungry, I talk about what I call the 4 imperatives: power density, energy density, cost, and scale. And those 4 factors determine the size and shape of our energy and power systems. Why do we use gasoline? Well, it's not because we love gasoline. It's because it allows us to do the things that we want to. The way I think about it, Tom, is that, I'd gladly put a milkshake or oatmeal or peanut butter in the tank of my car if when I press the accelerator, it makes the car go where I want to go. I don't really care where the energy is coming from to power this light or this microphone. I care that I have that energy service, right? The amplification or illumination. So what we don't really care, as I put it, we don't really care about energy. What we want is power. We want the ability to do work. And therein lies the key, is that we have to understand the difference between those two things. We want power. We want the ability to do more and more work. And the more work we do, the more work we want to do. And so that leads to the other point here about thermodynamics and physics. Why have hydrocarbons, coal, oil, and natural gas become so dominant? And even though we've added renewables, those renewables haven't displaced significant quantities of coal, oil, and natural gas. Why? Because if I put it this way, if oil didn't exist, we'd have to invent it. It's a near miracle substance. So, I've written books on this, and it was a much longer discussion, but I think that's the gist of it, that people need to understand why energy density matters. And I could hold up a bottle of water and say, well, if I filled this with sawdust, that's some energy. But if I fill it with gasoline, well, that's a lot of power. That's a lot of energy contained in there. So these ultimately, our world and the energy that we use is decided by these basic physics metrics and their ability of these different energy sources to scale and to be affordable. And that's I think that's a pretty, I'll stop there because I could go on, Tom, believe me, but I think that's enough for now.
Well, we're going to get to that later in the show because I want to try to cover that. But I want to take a quote from your book, page 169 here. Robert had no idea I was going to go here with this, but this is just something I highlighted. Without a doubt, the biggest obstacle to the ongoing pace of electrification in the world and to adding those 6 new grids of additional capacity is the lack of integrity. Poor governance, corruption are rife in low-watt, unplugged countries. Something like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, my friend, but like 1 billion people who do not have any electricity. Is that correct? Or am I close?
It's a little high. I mean, the UN now puts that number at 600-700 million, but to me, that's not the most important metric here, Tom. It's more about the electricity poverty globally. And I mentioned I did it in about a minute video today on Pakistan, because on Monday, the entire country of Pakistan went dark. The entire grid in Pakistan failed. 220 million people put into darkness. Well, this is the reality for billions of people around the world. Today, on the planet today, 3 billion people, 4 out of 10 people on the planet today use less electricity on a per capita basis than an average kitchen refrigerator in the United States. 4 out of 10 people today on the planet use less than 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity per capita per year. That's about 1,000 kilowatt hours. That's about as much electricity as my old kitchen refrigerator used. So this is the great disparity in the world. And why are countries like Pakistan, why are countries like Lebanon, and I was in Beirut five years ago. Why are they electricity poor? Well, there are a lot of reasons, but one of the key reasons is their governments don't work. The grid has to pay for itself. People, they want to use electricity, they have to pay for it. You can't make it free. And if everybody gets it for free, nobody's going to get it because the system can't survive. So that's where I was going with this issue of integrity. It's about societal integrity. The grid has to have people paying for the electricity. You can't make it free because that you can make it free for a while, but not forever.
If you keep the cost low enough where people can afford it and then people can grow, get out from underneath the wash basin. And I mean, these are stories that when you read these things and read them in your books, it's like, we just don't, and in my head, I don't comprehend it. And I bought the Lyndon Johnson book because of the electrification from your book that I read about in Texas where you live. And it's like, yeah, it was only in the 1930s, right? 1930s sure. and 40s that
this isn't ancient history.
Right.
I mean, I know a friend of mine, his dad lived in Veneta, Oklahoma, which is a small town in northeastern Oklahoma. He remembers the day that the electricity came to his home in the 1940s. He can describe it to this day. He remembers it so vividly. But you make an important point. Electrification is key, particularly for women and girls. As I say in the book, electricity frees women and girls from the pump, the stove, and the wash tub. And this was one of the great motivators for the New Dealers, including Burton Wheeler from Montana and George Norris from Nebraska and Sam Rayburn from Texas. Mm-hmm. They had Rayburn and Norris had grown up on farms. They had in rural ranches, and they'd seen their mothers washing clothes by hand. They'd seen their children, the women, on the farm women carrying water by hand, tending the stove. Electricity frees them from that drudgery, and so this is still one of the great challenges in the world today. If we're serious about women's rights, well, we got to get serious about electrification.
We've got to. And being a former telecom professional, I'm going to carry this through, Robert, because we're coming up on break here.
Sure.
I'm a former telecom professional. I know what's happening with coax and fiber and all these things. And so I remember, like, when we're talking about remembering when electricity came to your neighborhood, I remember when cable TV came to our neighborhood. But without electricity, we're not having any cable TV. We're not having any of that kind of stuff. You're not going to have
sure.
radio. You're not going to have any of that kind of communications that were in the nascent stages back in the 20s and 30s and 40s with television and everything. So we've got to understand and step back a little bit and say, well, do you realize how much of the world is so far behind, how bad the networks are, how bad, and I'm all about the network. I'm all about the internet and the Ethernet and all of that type of communication because I've dealt with it for my career, most of my career. And it's like, without the infrastructure, without the backbone, you're not going to transmit diddly crap. And so it's like, this has to be understood.
And that network you're talking about depends on the electric grid. It is right. The mother network.
That's
all
right.
of these other critical networks that we depend on, lights, water, all depend on the electric grid. And if the electric grid doesn't work, none of the other stuff works.
That's right. That's right. Robert Bryce is with us. 4 Whys Concerning Energy. Flying by. We'll be right back.
For more information on the Tom Matt RFZ mentality, please visit our brand new website at www.tommattshow.com. Subscribe to our podcast via your favorite podcast platform. Visit our brand new YouTube channel for consistently motivating messaging.
Fourth segment of the Tom Matt Show is sponsored by my other brother from another mother, Brock Fletcher, selling team of Keller Williams Realty. Now, as I've said many, many times, you guys, you've heard this. You've listened, if the fans of the show, you've heard me do they're not really reads. I'm selling it for my friends and my family. We utilize the services of both of Craig Stiles on our financial side of things and the real estate side of Brock Fletcher, who was the buyer seller agent for Big House Holt, Little House Lansing that we're in now. What's up, Mike Dedman, our buyer's agent. Selling team of Keller Williams Realty is Brock Fletcher's team. They are the best. You can trust both of our sponsors. They're so awesome. We love them so much. He will set the deadline. He set the price of my house before I even knew him. 2 years before we even sold a house, he gave me the advice. I listened to him. I told Sandy just about had a stroke. And because she had to, start thinking about selling her giant house that we're putting all this energy into, and talk about cost with my guest today, Robert Bryce. I mean, with a pump for a pool and all that stuff, call Brock today. If you want some information, some help, some coaching, I got 2 numbers coming at you. 517-853-6408. You can go online, kwsellingteam.com. You can go to the bottom of our homepage, tommattshow.com, where both of those guys are. Miranda Miller's there. Several people are there, but key people in our lives. And I'd like for you to check them out. Okay, go to that homepage there. But here's the super secret number. Tell them Tommy sent it. I heard it from Tommy. When he hears that or he sees that on a text, he knows it's a radio thing, because all my radio friends call me Tommy. 517-303-3262. 517-303-3262. Call Brock today. Text him. Tell him Tommy sent you. And we've got so many stories we could share with you about real estate, with interest rates, with predatory loans, all these things. Go to the reality of real estate. Go to that category on our website, and Brock's there with about 15 different shows. I mean, he's been with us that long. All right, Robert Bryce is our guest today. 4 whys concerning energy. We started to talk about this a little bit in the previous segment, Robert, but let's finish the thread on why the need for hydrocarbons. You started talking about that. You had the bottle of sawdust and the gasoline kind of analogy, but let's continue to educate people on the why we really need to have hydrocarbons and why we're just probably going to always have them.
Well, good, Tom. Yeah, it's not because that Ford bought the patents, or Exxon bought the patents for the super battery. That hasn't happened. The reality here again is basic physics, and it's about power density, energy density, cost, and scale, but particularly energy density. And as I said, I think before the break, if oil didn't exist, we'd have to invent it. It's a miracle substance, because of the way we can handle it at standard temperature and pressure. We can put it in our cars. It's abundant. It's cheap. I mean, I'm buying gasoline out here in Austin. It's less than $3 a gallon. Milk costs more than a gallon of gasoline. And yet we can for $3, we can put a gallon of fuel in our car, and our car can weigh 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 pounds and take us 20 miles. I mean, it's such an incredible bargain. And yet we take it for granted. But this is part of the reason. This is one of the reasons why it's become so dominant. And that electric cars, electric cars are nothing. There's nothing new to the Tesla. Thomas Edison experimented with electric cars. So you're close to Detroit, you know this. But so the reality is, we are going to need hydrocarbons for a long time to come, because nothing else can replace them at a cost that consumers can afford, and at a scale that we can manage economic growth around the world. The hydrocarbons are going to be here for decades to come. You don't have to love it, but that's the reality.
Well, let me ask you about, Sandy and I, because we're more on the road trip, we're not big flyers, and so we like to do the road trip. So we wound up ordering, and our YouTube video has done really well on our Toyota Sienna. We have a 2023 Toyota Sienna hybrid. And it's a beautiful vehicle. It's got all the tech on it. And to me, I did some searching around with this, and I'm like, you know what? These hybrids seem like they're a good mix. And I wanted to kind of get your take on that. What do you think about what Toyota's done with the, and this is not a plug for Toyota, unless Toyota wanted to come sponsor me, but we really like that hybrid vehicle, and it's a beautiful. I don't even call it a van. It's not a van. It's more of the Batmobile. I named it. So,
well, and
it's got all the stuff on it, right? And it's got
sure. And so just a quick answer to your question, I think hybrids to me make a lot of sense. Anything with a plug doesn't make sense. Hybrids are, in terms of material and intensity, right? The amount of batteries and the other stuff. It's much more efficient, I think, I think it's clear to have a hybrid than a fully electric vehicle, because the amount of battery weight that you have to carry in a full electric vehicle is so large. And that's one of the problems with them. My friend Jesse Ausubel calls them Soviet cars, because he just can't stand the idea that you have to carry this big battery around, whether it's fully charged or not. It weighs the same. So I think hybrids are clearly, the Prius, the long history of the Prius, obviously pioneered by Toyota. These vehicles make a lot of sense, and you see them not just in passenger vehicles, but also in delivery vehicles, garbage trucks, delivery trucks. Hybrids make a lot of sense.
How come we didn't get a rebate or some kind of incentive from the federal government?
Because you're bad, Tom, and you don't deserve it. That's why, you greedy bastard. Why do I have to pay for your car?
It's just one of those things. Hey, I'm all about doing the right thing for the environment. But one of the reasons we sold our big house, what we call Big House Holt, was because it was just the two of us, Robert. We had a beautiful home. We built it, but we had put in a pool. We had done all these things. And just our electric bill in the summer was so high.
Oh yeah.
It was ridiculous. Sure. So we moved into this small little home, and it's so great to be downsized. And we have our other place in Wisconsin where our youngest daughter lives. But it's been wonderful to not have to worry about this and watch our energy and our overhead costs go down.
Of course. And that's one of the key things that they care about, right? What is that recurring bill? What does it look like? And so I don't blame you at all. And I think these are decisions, but you weren't forced to make those decisions. Those are things that you were allowed to do, right? Or you chose for yourself. And I'm going to pivot, if you don't mind, just talk a little bit about the piece that I published in Substack about the billionaires behind the gas bans. One of this effort that has happened nationwide, and it's been a very lavishly funded campaign to ban the use of natural gas, including gas stoves. This is the groups that are doing this. They're getting funding from some of the world's richest people. Jeff Bezos, Michael Bloomberg, Laurene Powell Jobs, John Doerr. These are all billionaires, and they're trying to pass policy that will not allow you to choose what you want, to allow you to use the fuel that you choose in your home. And I think that's wrong. It's also a regressive tax on the poor and the middle class.
Exactly. And so why? Why is it that we have this?
Because they're saving us, Tom, Matt. They're saving us from ourselves. They have to.
Thank you for making that so clear.
They are going to save us because climate change. This is the issue. Never mind that the gas stoves all across America consume 0.4% of all the natural gas consumed in America. And yet you have these people from the Rocky Mountain Institute claiming you cannot use that because of climate change. I mean, this is nuts. It just doesn't stand up to any kind of scrutiny. And I think it's fundamentally, I think it's offensive. And I say that, and I use that word very carefully, because what about the poor and the middle class? How is it the billionaires are going to be able to fly? All of these ones that I've just mentioned, they fly on private jets. They have mega yachts. They're allowed to, fly in jets that consume 500 gallons of jet fuel an hour, but you're not going to be allowed to use gas to cook your dinner. That's the hypocrisy that I just cannot abide.
There's no balance. I mean, the balance that's out there, it's like you're penalizing the schlubs, as you call them.
Right.
And which I said to myself, I'm a schlub. I'm proud to be a schlub. Fine, great. Because we have low expectations of what we want to do with our lives. We don't need all of the fancy stuff. And that's that. Everybody makes their own decisions. But when the decision's taken away from you, when you don't have the opportunity, or you're paying $5 a gallon for gas, things got to change here. And I'm going to carry this through because we're going to come up on break here. Let me reset this thing because we got one more segment to go here. And I want to we're going to talk specifically a little bit more about the article that Robert was just mentioning that he wrote today that came out. But we're also going to talk about why climate change is misunderstood and difficult to address. That's the big overarching question. And we could talk for hours and hours about this stuff, because Robert is the man when it comes to this, the 4 whys concerning energy. What are we going to do here? We need to become more educated. We can't be irrational, because I believe that it's a rational kind of decision here, but we're being led by some irrational policy. And we'll talk about that when we come back. Robert Bryce is here. 4 whys concerning energy, irrational or rational, whatever. We'll be back.
Thank you again to our segment 4 sponsor, Brock Fletcher, real estate agent at the Selling Team with Keller Williams Realty. For more information on services provided by Brock, please call his personal cell phone at 303-3262 or by emailing Brock at kwsellingteam.com. This is the Tom Matt Show.
If you're a nonprofit, school, church, or youth group and need to spice up your event with some talent, please go to our website, tommattshow.com. Contact box there is easy to see. Share with us your situation because we are accepting applications. Send us a note about what you're trying to accomplish for a pro bono speaking engagement. So what that means is it's a freebie, and I would be the facilitator of this group speaking engagement with myself as the moderator, and I would bring in a Craig Stiles. This is a local event, okay? A Craig Stiles, a Brock Fletcher, to help our mid-Michigan local community. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest here. If you want to pay us to do these things, fine, that's great. But that's not what this read is all about. This read is about helping our community get better and better. And Lansing is growing and doing some good things with the state capitol here and Michigan State University. We've got a great thing happening around here, but there are a lot of people in need. If you need us to help you, let me know. Go to the contact box, and away we go with that. Now, Robert Bryce has got a lot of sites. He's got books everywhere. He's got movies. He's got videos, and you're just covering it all over the place. Robert, please plug everything you want to plug. How do people find you for speaking engagements? Everything that you do, please go right ahead.
Sure. Well, thanks. Well, it's been a pleasure, Tom. You know, I'm passionate about these issues, and this is what I consider the purpose in my life. And I think it sounds a little pompous, but I believe that. And I feel that in my heart that I have a purpose, and I embrace that. And one of the purposes in my life is to speak up. Who are my people? My people are the people who turn wrenches. I love those people. I love the people mechanics. I love people who fix things, build things, grow things. Those are the people who I want to speak for, that I'm privileged to speak for, and I think I am tasked to speak for. So what do I want people to do? Well, if they don't remember anything, robertbryce.substack.com. I've gone to Substack and really like that platform, and have been writing regularly there. It's all free for now. I'll probably go to a paid model at the end of the year, but robertbryce.substack.com. My website is robertbryce.com. I have most of my articles appear there. I also have the Renewable Rejection Database. Some of my speeches are there. I have a YouTube channel. You can find all that connected on my robertbryce.com website. So, and then you can also find out about my film, Juice, How Electricity Explains the World. It's available there. You can also find that at juicethemovie.com. I'm kind of like Tupac Shakur. We both have a film called Juice, late Tupac, which I don't know if I am allowed to put myself in the same thing with Tupac, but nevertheless, we both have a movie called Juice. I'll stop there, but robertbryce.substack.com. If you don't remember anything else, go there and subscribe.
Let me pivot here, Juice Man. How do you, okay, because I'm like the fitness, nutrition, and doing all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But how does Robert take care of Robert? How do you keep your saw sharp, your toolbox in the right order? What do you do personally to keep you, because you're all over the place, you're working constantly. We're exactly the same age, which is kind of funny how that all worked out. But what does Robert do to take care of Robert?
Look, Matt, you don't get this physique by just sitting around with beer and cookies. You know, you got to work hard at it. You know, takes some work. Look, I'm very lucky. My wife is an amazing swimmer. We live close to Barton Springs Pool. I swam already twice this week. I swam yesterday, the day before, even though it's been cold here, cold not compared to Lansing, but it was in the 50s and the water temperature is 60, 65 degrees. So I swam a quarter mile yesterday, swam a quarter mile the day before. I love to swim, love the cold water. I like to walk. I'm a bird watcher, love to be outside, avid outdoors person. But mostly it's walking and swimming. And then, I do a little bit I kind of joke around about I do a few push-ups and kind of act like I'm stretching and stuff, but it's mainly walking and swimming, Tom.
Well, we need to keep you around, because without voices like you shouting into the world, and I know how it is because I've been doing this now 12 years myself, and you just never know how much response you get, how many people are hearing you. A lot of people are hearing you, and I think a lot of people are very desirous of what you're sharing that information that you're sharing. Let's pivot there again to our fourth why. Why climate change is misunderstood and difficult to address, and where do we go? I mean, let's talk about that. And before we go there, though, I want to make sure that I say thank you for your video that you did for the skilled tradespeople, the Ukrainian skilled tradespeople, being a refired skilled tradesperson from the university. I really appreciated that article and that video that you did on that. So thank you for doing that. I appreciated that very, very much coming from a skilled tradesperson.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I think you're talking about electric linemen. I think the linemen, I think, are just, those, and I've met some of these guys, they come up and they're usually these raw boned guys, they usually got some impressive facial hair and, they're tough dudes, they're tough hombres. There are not very many women in that business, but they're the people who turn wrenches. They're the people who fix things, and they get out there in all kinds of weather in bucket trucks. And I've seen them myself, and I just have a lot of admiration and respect and gratitude for them. But about climate change, to get to your question, Tom, it's not Texas climate change. It's not Michigan climate change or Michigan warming. It's global warming. And this is the issue that's so hard for the U.S. and policymakers to understand. Should we make an effort to cut CO2 emissions? Well, yes, but we also have to be very clear about what effect we can have. And I'm using the royal papal we here on global emissions at a time when, as I said, all over the world, people live in dire electricity poverty. So this year alone, according to the IEA, the Indian electric system, their coal consumption will likely rise by something like 8%. So we can cut our emissions here in the U.S. It doesn't mean that that's going to have an effect globally. And therein lies the big challenge. And it's one of the reasons why I'll shut up after this. Natural gas to nuclear. If we're serious about reducing emissions, what is the best no regrets policy looking forward? Embrace natural gas, embrace nuclear power. Those are the ways we can decarbonize some of the electric grid and displace some demand for coal, because coal demand continues to rise. It's still at record levels and expected to continue rising both this year and next year, principally because of India and China. And the India and China are going to look out for themselves, and well, they should.
How is the big business of the hydrocarbon oil companies? How do you incentivize them to invest when it seems like our government is just trying to put them out of business? And it just seems like, well, why would they invest more in these humongous projects?
Sure.
They're getting no love from our federal government. How? Why?
No love is an understatement, Tom. Well, I had a guest on the podcast, Tom, named Adam Rosenswag, I think it was last week. And he made this very same point that right now oil and gas companies are not spending as much doing drilling because the market and the political environment is so anti what they're doing. So they're buying back shares, they're paying dividends, and well, they should. I mean, they're going to look out for their own interests. That's who they are. They're not charities. They're for-profit corporations. So I find it hard to fault them for what they're doing, but still, and this is not a partisan. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm disgusted. But the Democratic Party, and particularly this administration, more than any administration I've seen in my lifetime, has made it an extra effort to demonize the oil and gas industry.
Why have they done that?
It's just convenient politics, Tom. And I think that's all it is. It's just convenient politics. Oh, we'll lambast the electric utilities. Why? Because they can't really fight back. Well, we'll lambast the oil and gas industry. They really can't fight back. This is part and parcel of the Democratic playbook. And I say this not as a partisan, but this is just what I can see. I've been a reporter for a long time, and this is one of the standard items in the Democratic playbook. You attack big oil, and they've done that for decades.
We're coming up on the close of the show here. We got about 3.5 minutes to go here. Robert Bryce has been our guest today, the 4 Whys Concerning Energy. Robert, what would you like to close with on your first visit? And I want to thank you. I look forward to us becoming friends and doing more of these and assisting each other with the podcasting and the radio shows and all this kind of stuff. But what would you like to leave the listening audience with? I'm going to give you plenty of time to have the last word. Go right ahead, please.
Well, first, it's a joy to be with you, Tom. And as you can tell, I'm passionate about these issues. What would I wish for your listeners? Inform yourself. Inform yourselves. Don't fall for the easy soundbite. the energy and power networks that we have they're complex, and they require more than just some cursory kind of soundbite. Why we have the systems that we have is not some accident. There's no conspiracy here. Instead, they've evolved over now more than a century because these energy and power networks can provide the energy and power services that we demand at prices we can afford. And this is the other thing I would say, be grateful. I mean, we live in such incredible energy abundance. I mentioned Pakistan before. The average American uses as much electricity in 12 days as the average Pakistani uses in a year. We're incredibly fortunate, and don't forget that, and don't take it for granted, because we are the lucky ones. And so it's something I've tried to practice myself, is keep that gratitude foremost.
Well, there's no doubt about that. And it'll help you with your life and keep your brain straight. And having our attitude of gratitude, being grateful for everything that we have and that we do, is an amazing thing for living in this country. Robert, please share all of your contact info, and then we're going to jump out.
Sure. Well, sign up, subscribe, robertbryce.substack.com. Check out my website, robertbryce.com. We'll just leave it at that. I'm on Twitter, actually, PWR Hungry, at PWR Hungry. But robertbryce.substack.com. Thanks.
I'll put all those into the recap, everybody. If our show fits your business or group's mission, we want to be of service to you through our guest topics, issues. Robert Bryce is the bomb.
Ah, shucks. Now you say that to all the girls. Come on.
You know
now.
what? Well, I have 2 daughters and a great wife. And so, yeah, I probably do, but that's good. Here's something I want you to think about. And I want all the listeners to hear me say this every show. Always remember, before you can share love with others, you must love yourself first. That's why I talk about this stuff so much. We'll talk to everybody next weekend. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you to Sandy, to Brock, Sam Medved, Craig Stiles, Mitch Anderson, the whole crew, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you all. Tom Matt Show is a production of Boomers Rock Media. Thank you. We're out.
The Tom Matt Show is produced by Mitch Anderson of Black Circle Studios. Original music from the Source of Light and Power by the Ark of All.